This is Fantasy Football Today for CBS Local Sports. Nick Kostos, Jamey, Eisenberg, and Dave Richard providing you with starts and sits for week number 8. Dave, who is your start of the week at the quarterback position?
It's a guy who you drafted to be your starter, but the past, pretty much the entire season's been a bust for Russell Wilson, but he's playing against New Orleans. 5 of the 6 quarterbacks that have played against the Saints have given you at least 20 fantasy points. Russell Wilson's going to be next in line. I think this is actually going to be a high-scoring game, and I think Russell Wilson's going to come through for the fantasy owners who start him. So Doug Baldwin he'll connect with, and Russell Wilson will have a good fantasy day. Keep him in your lineup.
Yeah, it'll be better than the guy that he faced off with last week in Carson Palmer. Think about what Carson Palmer's done against the Panthers. Nothing. 7 interceptions in the last 2 games against them. 4 in the NFC Championship game. That's kind of started this downward spiral for him. I don't think it comes back to what we were hoping for with Palmer. Stay away from him this week.
Now, running back starts and sits. Jamey, no C.J. Anderson for the Broncos. He's on the shelf. You like Devonta Booker.
Love Devonta Booker. I mean, think about last week. He had 83 yards and a touchdown in a shared situation with C.J. Anderson. Now it's going to be all him. I don't think we see a lot of Capri Bibbs in this game. And the matchup against San Diego, while the Chargers have done well in terms of limiting the big games to opposing running backs, they still give up touchdowns. And I think you'll see that Booker will get the chance to score, and he may score twice. I love him this week.
He's a great #1 fantasy running back. He's a great rookie with a great opportunity. Jordan Howard had an opportunity once upon a time with Chicago, and he did good with it. But now the rookie is going to share that backfield with Jeremy Langford, Kadeem Carey, and he's running into a buzzsaw. That Vikings run defense is good. It's 4th ranked in the NFL. I don't know if Jordan Howard's even going to get 10 carries in the game. He's a sit.
Now to wide receiver starts and sits. Dave, you said you think there'll be a lot of scoring in that Seahawks-Saints game.
Go right back to it.
Which New Orleans pass catcher are you targeting?
Yeah, you'd think it would be Brandon Cooks or you think it'd be Michael Thomas, and I think those guys will get theirs. But Willie Snead has the best matchup on the board against that Seattle secondary. You know those outside corners are good. It's the slot where they're weak, and I think Drew Brees is going to have to get rid of the ball really quick. That opens up the middle of the field, and Willie Snead's going to have a chance to make some big plays. We were worried about how healthy he'd be, and then last week he came back, played a lot, had a lot of targets, a lot of catches. This week, fantasy owners should get him in lineups. He's going to finish as a top 12 wide receiver in week 8.
Yeah, I think you look at Kelvin Benjamin's a guy that most people start week in, week out. And it's probably going to be the case this week because of 6 teams on a bye. But I don't know if he's going to have a big day despite his big presence. I think you look at Patrick Peterson and what he's done against #1 receivers. They faced really 2 elite-level guys in Kelvin Benjamin's category. One was Mike Evans. It took 17 targets for him to have 70 yards more and a touchdown. And Brandon Marshall, 3 catches for 70 yards. I think that's kind of in line with where Kelvin Benjamin will be. He hasn't been consistent in finding the end zone, and I think he's going to have a little bit of a down game this week because of Patrick Peterson.
Now to tight end starts and sits. And Jamey, despite the struggles of Brock Osweiler, his tight end, C.J. Fedorowicz, still putting up numbers.
He's playing really well, and it's a great matchup. You know, the Lions are among the worst teams in terms of fantasy points allowed to opposing tight ends. Yeah. I think Fedorowicz continues to be a consistent target. For Brock Osweiler has been right around 7 each of the last 4 games, scored 2 touchdowns over that span, and I think he finds the end zone this week. I like him as a top 12 tight end.
Yeah, and Jack Doyle was a guy that fantasy owners really gravitated toward last week. It was because Andrew Luck had no one else to throw to.
Doyle's not going to rule?
Now, I'm sorry. He's taking on Kansas City. They're great at covering tight ends, and Dante Moncrief is expected back. Philip Dorsett's expected back. So Andrew Luck's got a lot more weapons to spread the ball around with, and it means that Doyle won't get nearly as many targets as he had last week. He was a great tight end in week 7. He will be a bum in week 8.
Those were your starts and sits for week number 8 for Dave Richard and Jamey Eisenberg. I'm Nick Kostos. You've been watching Fantasy Football Today for CBS Local Sports.